Carlo, one of the founder of the PMO community, and I'm thrilled to be your guide to this evolving landscape in project management. I will start with a question to our expert. The first question, Louise, is you, as you are the author of Stakeholders-Led Project Management. And the first question is, who are the key stakeholders in the PMO success, and how do their needs influence the structure and function of a PMO?
Thank you, Luke. We've done some of this, haven't we, Anna, for the book that we've been doing. But what I suggest to PMOs is that you consider your stakeholders in two groups. The first group is the demand side. So these are the people who are asking you about your projects. They want to know about projects. They want to know about what's happening across our portfolio of projects. These are our sponsors, our steering groups. So that's one group. And then the other group is the supply side. That's our project managers, the people working in projects, the portfolio managers, the program managers. So those are our two groups of stakeholders I suggest PMOs look at. And then it's just about stakeholder analysis. You know, how interested are they? How excited are they about going on the journey that you as a PMO manager want to take them on? And that's a problem for us sometimes. I get involved with mentoring PMO people, and one of the common problems I hear is they go for a job, and in the interview they meet their line manager or their sponsor, and it's so exciting. They really love the idea of the job. But when they get there, they find that sponsor is the only person interested in PMOs. And worse still, that person is leaving or is moving on to another job. And here you are, you're in this organization, and none of the management are that interested in the PMO. They're not that mature. They don't know about why a PMO is valuable to them. And that's a real problem for you when you go into those organizations and the demand side stakeholders are simply not ready for you. You're not going to walk in and be a chief project officer if the demand side stakeholders are not excited and not interested in what you're going to do. On the demand side, you need to understand them. Of course, on the supply side, you need to understand them. What are their problems? What are the project manager problems that are happening out there? And that dictates the kind of functions that you should be involved with. But we have to understand these stakeholder groups, not only because it helps us understand what are the things that we should be doing in the PMO, but also it often dictates what you can achieve in the PMO. And I see PMO managers go into organizations where the demand side simply is not ready for taking on board a chief project officer. And the truth is, you can be the best PMO manager in the world. I've mentored with some fantastic PMO managers, but when they're faced with that, sometimes you just can't achieve it. And that's a real problem. And you certainly can't achieve it today. It's something you have to work up towards. So in short, understand both the demand side and the supply side, and then you can work out what is it that you can genuinely offer in the organization.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other of the panelists who want to add anything on what just Louise mentioned?
I think Louise is the one. Go ahead.
No, Louise, go, please.
Thank you. I think Louise is the one and the only. It is 100% accurate, but I think it was worth mentioning that as a PMO leader, there's ability to be flexible, adaptable, scalable, acting as a sniffer, understanding the ecosystem, understanding what does it mean value, who can bring value to the table, and establish a strong relationship is a mandatory skill if you want to master the ability of being a business leader beyond a PMO leader. So 100% aligned with Louise.
Thank you. So at this point, my next question is for Peter, but as usual is open to everyone else. The question is, what inspired the shift towards a human-centric leadership models in project management, and why it is crucial today?
I could start by saying what inspired it is sanity, because I reflect that when I first started in project management, it was human-centric. That was basically what I did. I mean, if I reflect when I first began in the world of project management, it's, you know, I hadn't been on a training course. I wasn't given a methodology. I wasn't given a structure or anything like that. But we were reasonably successful, and the way we were reasonably successful is because we focused on the people side of things. I feel with the complexity and growth in scale and the remoteness often of the project teams and project resources we use today, that we drifted away from that kind of human-centric leadership. But I do feel strongly that we're heading back. And one of the great advantages that I see, and we can't have any conversation like this without talking about artificial intelligence. It's mandatory these days. But I think one of the important things that I see with regard to AA is that this is going to allow us to get back to human-centric leadership, to focus on the people. The reality is projects are successful because of people. And if we use any form of technology or way of assisting us in that journey, then it's going to make it a lot better for us. And I think in many organizations, when I've worked in various PMOs, I've either started from scratch or re-engineered. One of the things I've looked at is the complexity of the demands on the people and the kind of heavy governance, the rigid structure of quality assurance, lots of things that are slowing projects down and making people spend, in my mind, too much time focused on the non-people side, the non-delivery side. And so therefore, I think we're in a very opportune time when we can readdress this and turn our face towards a much more people-focused effort for project managers, for PMO leaders, etc. And that, in my mind, is only going to be a great thing, because yes, we are faced with more critical, more complex, more challenging projects that businesses demand. So I think it's I would say it's a reshift. I think it's a rebalancing, and I think it's a great thing.
Perfect. Thank you, Peter. Anyone else from the panel want to add or provide a different aspect of this question?
I'd like to just pick up on one thing that Peter was going towards, and that is, I suspect, certainly we see it here in South Africa, that one of the big drivers is agility. And you can't get agility without creating self-empowered teams. You can't get agility without creating that environment for collaboration. And if I put my research hat on here, I'm doing some research with Tim Koppenborg and Kwame Amoa in the University of Cincinnati. And one of the things that we're concerned about is, what does that leadership, what does agility and leadership look like, and what can the PMO do about it? Now, you've heard of servant leadership. You've heard of ethical leadership. You've heard of horizontal and vertical leadership. I think the one leadership that you are going to have to look out for in the PMO now is emergent leadership. It's sometimes referred to as these self-leading teams. But what it really is about is somebody coming forward to be the appropriate person to take over the leadership. And more importantly, this is something that's hard to achieve in the PMO. We don't have an answer to this yet, how this is going to work, is once they've come forward, they've got to go back again. And sometimes they don't. Sometimes they come forward because they fill a gap and they're good at that part of it. And then they continue in the leadership role, even when it's inappropriate. So one big challenge for us in the PMOs is, how do we create that environment where emergent leadership, flexible leadership can work, and it's not all about roles and responsibilities. So that's something, and I don't think we have an answer to that one yet. I don't know I'd love to hear from the rest of the panel on that.
Well, I would like to jump in. Peter, thank you. I'm 100% a fan of this focus on the well-being, because for me, it's human nature. My personal appreciation is, you cannot be a good professional if you are not a good person first. So I think this is powerful, because empathy and understanding the personal belief and values that are gasoline of each team member are a strong way to have this strong connections. And I do believe that this collective ability to think and create develops this unity, because from human resources to IT, from information security to finance, as a PMO leader, you need to create this unity in order to have a competitive advantage. And by definition, a project is a multidisciplinary endeavor. As of today, running and leading by human beings. So for me, this focus on on the well-being and focus on the human and developing this empathy is key to build a strong basis for our execution.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I always go back to, for me, a very simplistic analysis is, that a PMO is all about having the right people in the PMO, right people associated with the PMO. And what I often see as a challenge is that sometimes not the wrong people are in that role, or the budget isn't there to have the very best people you can, and that's where I constantly see failure. And one of the things I focus a lot on is my own team, and of course all the other stakeholders. But I always start with my team.
Great.
Somebody's commented here about, is this culture or organizational? And I think one of the things I'm seeing is it is cultural, and our traditional organizational structures are holding it back. We are still task-oriented. Our organizations are still task-oriented, not people-oriented, and it's holding back that cultural change. And that's a big challenge for PMOs. How do we make that work?
So this is Tom, guys. Hey, so is this something that needs to be woven into, like, rather than come just as a PMO, but as part of growth? In other words, like, it should be part of the thought process of a company, where project managers should be part of the leadership growth. Would that be a way to look at it?
Tom, in research side, from my academic point of view, 20, 30 years ago, we were all worried about project-centered organizations, the whole matrix thing, and it was all about project-based organizations. And I think we thought we'd solved that, and we haven't. Actually, we've still got traditional functional organizations, and we have to shift that, which I think is what your comments are also pushing towards. And that's why sometimes PMOs struggle in the environments that they're in.
Do you have, Louise, do you have an example to share where the human-centered leadership with the PMO led to a significant project success? Anyone also? Yep.
I thought I did, and then I decided when I went to see it this week I haven't. I can tell you some of the things that you get wrong. I'm working with an organisation here in South Africa, and they are very much into agile-based environments, creating this human-centered approach. But their performance systems, which are old HR functional, they are still doing performance management based on team individual stuff, and their performance system is stopping that cultural change. And that's another part, Tom, of that problem of our functional organizations. HR is a big problem for change in the way that we look at things. So I'm afraid I don't. I think we're still struggling a bit.
Okay. Anyone has any example that they can share with everyone?
Well, I think it's, as I said, it's human nature. You will be surprised by the amount of information that you will be receiving if you just ask. Sometimes assuming it's our worst enemy. Well, in addition on uncertainty and all these concepts that are among our profession, but just imagine that you reach out to somebody and you ask, hey, what makes you feel happy? You will be surprised by the amount of information that that person will be sharing with you, because that will be involving personal values. And once you align the personal values with the objectives of the organization, that is powerful. I think it's a long-hanging fruit on human nature interactions. Just ask.
And I'm absolutely with you, Joe. And looking at, I think I'm sorry if I've pronounced your name wrong, Naser Salam. And he's suggesting that maybe with AI coming along, this will help in our PMOs, and we can concentrate on exactly the kind of things that you're talking about, Lucio, is that AI is not a PMO killer, I don't think. It just releases us to do the things we should have been doing, and doing the kind of thing that you're talking about.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree with that. I think, I'll be honest, I was a project manager for many years, and what I see AI as being capable of, and we're evaluating a whole range of technology at the moment, what I see it capable of is actually taking away the stuff I really didn't like doing, the boring stuff, the drudgery. If project managers are honest, I think most people would agree with me. There's just a whole bunch of stuff. Take it away, do it better than me, never tire, 24/7, all the rest of it. Do it better than I could ever have done because I'm a human, but free me up to be an amazing human project manager in an AI empowered world. And that's the vision I've got.
And I think leading by example, it's another good, well, case study. For me, a PMO leader does not complain, does not focus on things over which he has no control, does not fear the future, nor does he regret the past. He values it, embraces it, and learn from it. He does not pursue fame, so ephemeral and irrelevant. Is not selfish and works for the common good. So for me, as I said, it's human nature. And develop this culture around empathy will bring you a lot of valuable information to start building up your own ecosystem on how to deliver from the PMO perspective.
It's interesting, Lucia. If any of you are followers of, there's a great YouTube clip about the prisoner's dilemma. And when you do the analysis of prisoner's dilemma, one thing it turns out is that being nice is a good strategy. And so that kind of supports also some of the things that you were describing there, is that we want, you know, tit for tat is I'm not doing that because you're not doing that type of thing. Ultimately, in the long run works, but you have every now and then to be nice and to actually reach out. And my stakeholder work that I did on stakeholders showed that one of the principles was it doesn't harm to be liked and to be nice. We found that time and time again in terms of engagement with stakeholders. Yes, I agree.
Yes, and I have a little secret, Luis. I have this hippie style on everything I'm doing, but empathy is not for everybody, and I learned it in a hard way. So if somebody in the team or in the ecosystem doesn't like to empathize, it's okay. That's okay. It's not for everybody. But then start an introspective work as a leader to understand how to engage these difficult stakeholders into the ecosystem. So I don't want to share this happy scenario. It's my ambition, but I do understand that it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
Yes, absolutely. There's a question on the line from about the PMO somewhat dissipating the IT world. I think that's quite interesting because I would agree. We saw IT as being the centre for a lot of PMO work, and then it seems to have gone a bit. And I was talking to a portfolio manager in Australia, and he said something which I thought was really interesting. He said, if you want to make portfolio management work, you have one portfolio in the organisation. That's a really difficult thing to achieve. But it's really necessary if we're genuinely going to align our projects with the organizational value. And I think that's why we're seeing in the IT world going back a bit, because they've been so strong, they've almost been wagging the tail of the dog, whatever the phrase is. And now it needs to step back and let the business run those portfolios, because one portfolio, one portfolio, I don't know many organizations who achieve that.
Yes,
but that's the heart of the CPO, isn't it? That's it. It's bringing it together into a single C-level executive that oversees probably. I mean, I imagine it is in my own organization. We have a number of PMOs. You know, we have a product PMO, we have a technology PMO, we have my PMO, which is professional services. But you know, we come under a single umbrella. We don't have someone who's called a CPO, but they effectively do that role.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think each one of us have a different baseline when it comes to maturity, alignment, and value realization within our organization. So this conversation related to have one single view, one single point of truth, act as a one-stop shop, I think it's an extended conversation because it involves strategy, involves thinking about business outcome, not only deliverables, act as a sellers. So it's an extended conversation.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I will move to the next questions. And for the next question, I would like to have Clive to provide his perspective. So how did the PMO transition from the early control and coordination function to become catalysts for strategic change within the organization?
Yeah, thanks, Luca. So I think the other panelists may have touched on it a little bit, but I think those of us who have been in PMOs for a long time, recognize that PMOs did start off in what was probably termed as a project support office. So generally an office that was provided very administrative type functions, that provided templates and those kinds of things, probably took minutes at meetings, and that was probably the sum total of it, and managed very low complex projects. Certainly in my career, I've been involved in PMOs where I often wondered, well, certainly I felt that we should be doing more important things. And some of the leading organizations, even in South Africa at the time, this was many years ago, where we were very busy doing projects. But when I look back and listen to the CEO and everything he spoke about, and the new ventures, moving into new territories, all of these big exciting things, the PMO was nowhere to be seen. We were setting up call centers and doing little things like that. But over the years, I'm pleased to say, I think there's been a recognition that project management and PMOs can play a much more important role, a much more strategic role. There's always been the question of what is the value of the PMO, and we always find ourselves trying to defend ourselves and to prove what value we bring to the organization. And I think many PMO leaders in years gone by found it very difficult. But I'm glad to say that when I look around and look at many organizations, they see the value of project management, program management, portfolio management, and the PMOs actually have a seat. When I say around the table, I think certainly in my experience, we get invited to those executive committee meetings. We get invited to those strategy formation and definition sessions. So we are starting to play a role in that space. And as Peter quite rightly said, that in many instances, we may not be called the CPO, Chief Project Officer, but we kind of fulfilling that role. So again, we've moved really from being a support function to being a more strategically driving function, if I can put it that way, where we are emphasizing and talking about value delivery, benefits realization, change navigation as well, or change management. And so some of the key functions which were never part of a PMO before are now forming part of the PMO in order to provide the organization with the kind of information, the analytics to enable the proper decision making. And as Louise also mentioned, we still have the issue though of the functional structures. We've still got to break some mindsets. So people still have, from wherever they come, because people move between organizations. So in their past life, they might have experienced the PMO as being a very small entity focusing on maybe one program or a few projects. And so you got to break that mindset and shift it to help them realize that actually we've got visibility of all of the work or most of the work that's being done in the organization, certainly the strategic and business imperatives, and therefore we are in a better position to provide the information you need for better decision making, and certainly we can play a much more strategic role in the organization.
Look like one from the panel want to add or provide a different perspective? We take as I know, and you, Clive, also partially already answered my next question that was related to the strategic impact, how the historical evolution of the PMO, where do you see the future of the PMO development heading in terms of strategic impact? You already partially answered this question. At this point, is anyone from add anything, or we can start going towards the CPO perspective? So, Luis, I have a question for you. This is the next one. How can you share how the CPO balances strategic project objectives with nurturing teams dynamics and individual talents? Can you provide your perspective?
Is that for Lucio?
I have the same question, Luis or Lucho, or both.
Luis Guardado.
Okay, better known as Lucho. You will have the best recommendations if you ask for Lucho rather than Luis. Well, this is a wide range answer. I will highlight some conceptual approach This is a journey. We don't have a unique answer. I will quote the value ring methodology for the PMO Global Alliance. You need to start understand how does it mean value for from the executives. And let's imagine that you have been hired and you are on day one of your new job. You need to understand the ecosystem. You need to understand the baseline, the ground, the landscape where you will be delivering your service. The second movement will be reach out to the executives and ask, what are your pain points? What's your ambition? But I'm referring to the strategic ambitions. In this conversation, the approach should be sniff these pain points, these low-hanging fruits. Put attention in the business outcome for the year or for the period, and start thinking about how can I, as a PMO, can address all these single pain points and start designing services accordingly to deliver a value perception. And this is an iterative process. Once you start closing these gaps through your portfolio of services, you will be receiving feedback for the executives that ask you to close those pain points. And the real thing, or the real objective here, is to start gaining influence and power in a good way, not in a bad way. Once you have influence, you need to think about adaptability, flexibility, and scalability. And this is an ongoing process. The setup that you have today of your PMO needs to be changed in the short term always, because the adaptation to the company needs, it's an ongoing process. And one recommendation from my side is be creative. Historically speaking, we have dozens of frameworks, methodologies, and we are trying to follow the method as much as we can. For me, the professional of the future needs to keep learning and understanding the new ways of doing things and have a strong inventory of solutions and use them accordingly to the ecosystem, to the environment, to the business need, and mainly the company need and the executive's ambition. If you start this journey following these steps and measure the benefit realization, you will start acting not as a cost center, but a revenue center. I always told my people, hey, you are sellers. You are not PMOs. You are sellers of the benefit that we can bring to the table. Because I think a conceptual mistake is thinking about the technical words, speaking to the executives, hey, the risk, the probability, and the variances. Let's be honest, our leaders, the executives, the owners, the board, they have this attention span like chickens, a couple of seconds. And if you don't speak their language, which is currency in most of the cases, you will lose their attention. But if you speak with them in their own language, which means, hey, this is what I'm bringing to you, and for you to fulfill your strategic objectives, and as a consequence, you will have your annual bonus and you will take your family to Disneyland. If you can achieve that kind of connection and the trust, the vote of trust for the executives, you will be almighty because you have the trust to change things based on service delivery and as a service portfolio, tackling all this constant upcoming pains. It's a personal appreciation. It's easy to say, but it's a long journey.
Okay, thank you. And Peter, Clive, do you have any different perspective, or you want to add anything to this
Well,
question?
yeah, so just imagine this, and I'm painting a picture of the future, hopefully. So you've got this chief project officer, you've got this business, you've got strategic project objectives on one hand, but on the other hand, You want to empower people, you want to excite people, you want to engage people, you want to develop people. So just imagine a situation where it's no longer that top-down delegation. Oh, we have a project, therefore you are going to be project manager, you're going to be program director, you're going to be on the project team. Imagine a world where you could submit, you could bid effectively for, I can see what's coming in the portfolio. Okay, that looks a really interesting and challenging project. I want to put myself forward for that. And I think this is the team I'd like to work with, or team members submit. Suddenly the power, the passion, the enthusiasm is coming from the people who want to be part of this, as opposed to I'm sitting here and I'm just waiting for to be given my next challenge. We're not there yet. We're playing around with some ideas with internal projects through my own PMO, where we put that up and we ask people who'd like to kind of take a lead and who'd like to be involved. It's very early days, but I think that could be a very exciting development.
Thank you.
One of the things that Lucio talks about in talking about influence, which is really important, that he works, and I can tell you he works through influence, he does. And that's classic of a leader. And somebody said, oh, we've maybe redefined the word PMO to being people management office. I wonder whether it's project leadership officer. I think we should all consider PMO people leaders now, because that's what Lucio is describing, leadership. And I think Lucio leads his people on that journey. And that's something to ask of ourselves. Are we leaders, or are we just managing the processes? Are we just managing the environment, or we're actually leading the people? And I think, Lucio, you lead the people.
Yes, the people are really, I mean, it's really powerful. We actually changed it in our own organization, because I was asked that by my team, and they said, what does PMO stand for? And I thought, I'm not having this, so let's talk about what we're doing. And we actually refer to our team as projects, methods, and outcomes. How do we develop the project community that we have, engage them? We have a project academy, we have a community, we have sessions, a bit of education, we have a method. Obviously, you need a method or framework, etc. But the last part we felt was really missing was, as for the O, was the outcomes, the connection to reality, the group that really looks at that actual engagement and value of the project deliverables all around business benefits, etc. So for us, that was our kind of that was the way we branded ourselves, as projects, methods, and outcomes.
Clive, anything to add?
Just don't be afraid to explore new ways of doing things. I think that's one of the main messages. Historically speaking, we are experts in methods, in frameworks and stuff, and that's okay. But if you want to pursue this C-level ambition, or the thing that we have been discussing, is you need to be a business-driven leader. It's not the same of being a project manager. It's not the same. We have difference on both sides. Let's think about let's act as owners. Let's think about our let's think like our CEO, not as a project managers. If you want to fulfill this new role, you need to be able to have this 4/5 view and 4,000 view. It's a mixture.
You're describing about the people around the projects, the empathy. It's almost answering the next question about the human-centric approach in project management. So we're at this point moving forward to the last reserve question that I have for today. That is, what type of input does a CPO provide to an executive team that impacts the company's direction and strategy? So, Peter, can you start providing some answer, please, or your perspective?
Absolutely. So, the one way I paint it is, if you think about PMOs, there can be kind of three levels. There's if you like, the typical PMO, which is they're recipients of trust strategy. All I do is, whatever you tell me to do, I'll manage those projects in the best way I possibly can. And the next level up is where you've got a more mature, more elevated PMO. And what that PMO can do is question, challenge what is being thrown at it around, capacities and priorities. What the CPO does is at the highest level, because now you've got a seat at the table. Now you are a voice as far as strategy is concerned. So what does a CPO potentially provide their executive team? I think reality is one important thing. It's like, guys, you know, okay, this strategy has changed. It's going to have an impact. This is the decision, but we're doing other stuff over here. So this has to stop. This has to accelerate. This has to disappear completely. That kind of input, you know, one of the pain points I see in many organizations is they operate on this kind of infinite capacity model as far as projects are concerned. No matter what's thrown at the top end, you know, the business has to deal with it. I use the analogy of one of those great big, you know, like American trucks or whatever. The cab up front is the executive team, and they want to go in this direction, then they want to go in that direction, and they want to go this fast, they want to go even faster. The load behind in the lorry, in the wagon, if you like, gets heavier and heavier and heavier. And then suddenly, if you change your mind too much, if you deviate too much, you get that horrible kind of jackknifing accident. And the PMO is a great break to that, I think, in managing that. So I think a statement of reality, a statement of capacity, priorities. I think they can also provide conflict resolution at the highest level, understanding the landscape at the executive decision strategic level. And I think they can then be a channel down through the organization on the practicalities and the priorities. That's the way I would summarize it.
Perfect. Any other perspective from anyone else from the panels?
Yeah,
I
I
think
think I'd like to add. Sorry, Louise.
Yes, Clive,
Do you wanna
go ahead.
No, Clive, you go.
All right. So I think I'd like to add to that, to say that, you know, the difference. I think we know that in any organization, and regardless of which region you come from, I think you know, not having a C-level position kind of limits your influence to some extent. And yes, I know, you know, having met Lucha at in Paris as well, and we had I've heard a lot about him and had discussions around how he influences at his level and so on. And it a lot depends on one's personality as well, and to what extent you can influence. But I think having a seat at the table does give you that positional power to also influence things, and people take you a bit more seriously. So the CPO would certainly. I just want to list a couple of things that I think that they would provide input or influence in. One is certainly strategic alignment. So because they've got the visibility and the understanding of the where the organization is going and what are the discussions around strategy, they can certainly give input into that. The other is around resource management or allocation. So having visibility of all of the projects across the organization, they can certainly see where the bottlenecks are. So if some of the things we kind of currently experiencing, we've got a number of projects that are coming initiated by some of our clients, and we're seeing that through our processes now, that in IT there's specific skills and around certain development channels as well as testing that are a bottleneck because they don't have the capacity to deliver on those projects. So we have visibility of that. Whereas if it's just IT looking at their resources, they may have other focus areas. Then obviously there's cross-functional collaboration. So you're communicating with the different heads or executives across the organization, and you're providing that that, I don't want to say glue, but certainly the medium in which we can get finance and IT and human capital to all talk to each other, and then performance monitoring. So what's key for me is often an organization can define its strategy very well. You know, they go away for a few days into the bush or wherever, come up with these fantastic strategies, and that's pretty much where it stops, right? Many of us have been in organizations for a long time, and we've been talking about this for many decades. But what needs to really happen, and this comes from the project world, is an ability to measure our performance against achieving our strategies and business priorities. And that really is the bottom up feeding back to the strategy. And again, a CPO can harness or coordinate all of that reporting and analytics to confirm or to show the organization by doing these projects, or how well we're doing these projects, will show us how well we're achieving our strategy and our business priorities. So I think that those are some of the things I'd like to add as a key roles or responsibilities that a CPO can bring to the table.
I think
Clive?
there is no a single recipe for creating a PMO, and consequently, no PMO is the same as another. But
Yeah.
if you want a special seat on the C-level group, I think one of the main objectives should be we need to pursue and own the strategic planning process. If you own the strategic planning process, you will nail it, because you will have the ambition from the executives, from the board, from the capital investors from first hand. And that will allow you to have a holistic view of the future, of the current and installed capacities, and you can accommodate and arrange your delivery accordingly.
I'd like to disagree with Lucio.
Mm.
Let me have a go.
That is good. That is fun.
That's good.
Isn't it? So I was thinking about some of the CPOs that I know have been very successful. And one of the things that I see them as is they are boundary spanners. They sit on the fence between the business and the project world. And it's important that they do. It's important they don't become the business, and it's important they're not in the other side. They are boundary spanners. And for that reason, they can do the kind of things, Clive, that you were talking about. Great CPOs are fantastic silo breakers. They should be able to go through to break those silos that traditionally sit within our traditional organizations. So I think that boundary spanning is very important. I also think they bring a very important thing to the table, and that's an understanding about the consequences of projects, and in particular, the consequences of programs. I deal with a lot of organizations who attempt to run major programs, and they don't understand the consequences of doing that. And that's why they stall. And the CPO has got to be a person who can convey and get people to understand, this is the consequences. Do you really want this? Because if you don't, let's not do this. So I think I'm going to argue for the CPO as a boundary spanner rather than right in there leading the strategy. Maybe we're agreeing.
I think this collective ability of thinking and create is what makes you, well, great. And I will say, my recommendation is risky, but being honest, if I'm in the middle of the shadow of that, I won't be fear. I will. So it's what I enjoy the most. The opportunity to, well, think crazy things and try to achieve it.
So we are already at 12 minutes to the end. I would like to move towards the Q&A. I think at this point, Aina, I would need your help to you were collecting the questions in the Q&A on the chat.
Yeah, of course.
Which is the first one.
And thank you, everyone. So I would like to address Naser, if I pronounce your name correctly. Thank you very much for being the most active in our chat and in the conversation. So if you feel comfortable, feel free to unmute yourself and start the conversation with a panelist. Or if not, I will just read one of your questions.
First of all, thank you for this. For me, it's an evening here in the Middle East. So it's my first participation in the PMO community. I'm so glad, I'm so excited. But honestly speaking, I was, as you said, I was participating in a lot of questions, and most of them, I forgot them. So please, if you can remind me, it will be great from your end. But the last, maybe I will just bring the last question and the last thing about the CPO, sorry, what's his role and how he can be an added value to the executive people. I somehow disagree with Lewis because I think so we need to be balanced and in a hybrid model. Yes, we should be handling the strategic plan or the business plan, but we should be careful because we are not the only stakeholder in the organization. There's a lot of important bodies are sharing the same thoughts. They want to be engaged and to be participate on the company or in the organization value or the OKRs, I call it. So we need to give some space for the others. and we should be in a collaboration point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Naser. And I have another question for Louise Worsley. Louise, what are the consequences of the programs and projects that you were speaking of?
The one I'm worrying about is programs, and I have a real example of one that we're working on at the moment, and that is that the governance structures in a program are very different. I mean, in a program, what we say is, I know you have these normal functional, but we're going to ignore those. Actually, we're going to put the power in a group, in a program, which is going to have power across our normal organizational structures. And many organizations don't realize that. And they try and run programs by breaking them up into a little bit of project being done here, a little bit of project being done here, a little bit of project being done here. That's not program management. That's not delivery of a single understanding of the value delivery. So I think the big one is that many organizations don't understand. I mean, I have organizations say to me they're going to run 5 programs. No, you're not. 1 will tear you apart. 5 means you're not doing it right. So I think that's the area in particular I see a lot of.
Thank you.
I would like to share something.
Of course.
Our profession has not been always in fashion. So I always think how to stay relevant for the institution, for the organization, for the market, for the community. And in order to keep relevant, to maintain you relevant within the organization or the ecosystem, it's a personal opinion. Define yourself is limited yourself. If you want to keep relevant, I have this quote that I love and I enjoy to say it every time I can, is when it comes to process, when it comes to configurations, to design, I always like to learn it, master it, and then break it. Because in that sense, you will feel the obligation to restructure yourself as needed.
Well, so this is Tom, by the way. Louis, thank you for responding, because the reason I asked the question is, again, depending on different product lines or depending on a company, like let's say somebody has an AI initiative today. At the same time, they have a product development also happening, which has nothing to do with AI. And then, so these two are 2 different lines, but they're 2 different programs, 2 different projects, right? So that's why I was asking the question is why, like, AI could be a whole different program run by a whole different group. They may have their own little governance and PMO, whereas running a regular product development could be something, a different view. So would these 2 be 2 programs then? Like, that's what I'm thinking.
Well, I think it's we need to extend to have a proper answer, but my recommendation is you need to study your landscape, your current state, your baseline, and based on that, you will start creating a journey. As an example, a couple of years ago, my ambition was to act as a one-stop shop, to keep things simple, to support all C-level functions as needed. That was my ambition. And based on that, I understood my ecosystem and started my journey. So the formula or this approach most likely will apply for so many scenarios, but the way or the path to be followed will depend on your ecosystem. I think that will be the answer, because if you are having a difficult situation in place, okay, that situation needs to be addressed accordingly. And suddenly you will have a dozen of difficult situations to get your ambition. But for that reason, for me, this is a journey. It's not it's easy to say it, but what I'm sharing with you, it took me 13 years within the company. And also, the first step was to have this vote of trust from the executives. If you have that, you will have the 80% of your progress already achieved.
Yeah, that's a big one. The stakeholder, participation, the blessings from the top, those are key for the successes here.
Yes, and I think to share this spirit of service, of supporting as needed, delivering as a project with a beginning, with an end. I think the concept can be shaped based on business need. And for me, it's hard sometimes, but saying no at first, for me, it's painful. For me, it's if somebody asks for some specific service, I think about it. I try to shape the service as a project and then include it within my portfolio. And in that sense, it becomes a yes. And then I have more influence, an additional service within my portfolio. And sorry for being so passionate about this and be romantic sometimes, but the short answer would be it's a journey, and it all depends of your baseline.
Lucio, I was told by a PMO manager just last week, our job is not to say no. Our job is to shape the information for our clients so they can say no. And I just thought that was lovely.
I love quotes.
I like that.
Don't you?
And I think I have the last question to the
Yes.
panel sent me in private. So the quote is, I'm seeing performance management being administered at the project level, and it's based on project success factors. However, should performance management of value be held at the CPO level?
That's at least it's based on project stuff. I mean, there are many organizations that don't have their performance management based on project stuff. We still don't quite know how to do performance management in the project world. HR are useless at it because they can't think projects. So the PMO has to be a real driver of this, I think. But at least they're doing it on projects. I see so many organizations where at the end of the year, they suddenly scrabble around and out comes a job description. And unfortunately, that just doesn't work in our project environment. And interestingly, I just saw HR's strategic, these are the things we're going to worry about this year from the Institute Personnel Directors. And not one of the things was projects. HR don't care about projects. Sorry.
No. They don't. We provide a dashboard actually. I mean, it's again early days, but we have a dashboard, and dashboard is fed by net promoter scores that come from our stakeholders, our clients for our projects. It comes from the project health checks that we run, so our own global PMO insight into the projects and the project managers. It's also based on we have a project academy, so it's progression through the project academy on various badges and certifications and so forth. I wouldn't say we are the heart of the performance management, but we offer what we think is intelligent insight for the managers of the direct managers and project managers to take an assessment.
I think on this positive note, we can end our session today. Thank you all very, very much. Peter, Clive, Louise, Lucio, thank you for your insights. Tom, Carla, Naser, and the rest who were very active on chat. Thank you very much. That's why we are gathering here to learn from the panelists, but also learn from each other. I learned from your questions. I learned from your comments. And we are having our next event on March 6th, Women Leadership Through the P3O Lens. It doesn't mean that this event is just for women. It's just dedicated to March 8th, which promotes women leadership and women rights. So the panelists are going to be just women, but men, please welcome to join our meeting. Welcome to share your knowledge, your experience, raise your questions, and support us. And welcome all to the PMO community. If you are not with us yet, we have lots of more engaging events coming soon, such as debates, games, in-person, on-site event, podcasting. So hope to see all of you soon. And Luca, of course, thank you very much for being an amazing facilitator of today.
Thank you so much.
This was really fun. Thank you,
and
Tim.
everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Have
Bye.
a wonderful day.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Be safe,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.